Hello, I'm Sarah Butcher, and this is Tales of the Extraordinary, the mini podcast series that digs deep beneath the surface on what it's like being a woman in the global energy industry, revealing each guest's origin story and discussing some of the personal challenges they've overcome on the way. This is our second episode, and this week I'm speaking to Stacey Fidgeon, who is Xodus' business development manager based in Perth, Australia. Despite showing a natural aptitude for maths at school, Stacey downplayed her technical capabilities for many years until she found her inner confidence and is now, quite understandably, a proud, self-confessed nerd. Stacey, welcome. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Sarah?
Very good. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your evening to talk to me. I really do appreciate it. And what time is it with you now?
It's 7:10.
7:10.
But child's in bed. We're all good.
Good. So I will get started and we'll dive right into it with why energy?
It was a long path for me to be in energy. I have probably at the 25-year mark of my career, but been in the energy industry for about 6-7 of those years. God, maybe 8. And so I came to the energy industry through technology. So my background is digital, and came in to kind of support really a friend in a project that was related to innovation. And then found myself getting more and more entrenched and just really enjoying the changing nature of the industry. I think had I come into it at the start of my career, I might not have enjoyed it so much, but everything's changing so quickly now that I'm really drawn to it, and it feels very innovative and changing, and I love that.
And what are you seeing that's changing in the energy industry at the moment?
I guess different kinds of energy. The mix here in Australia, we kind of stalled for so long, and then it felt like a bit of a slingshot being pulled back, and all of a sudden it's let go and it's just moving so fast. But also just around the challenges of making even our traditional oil and gas projects happen, that's become harder, and obviously, having to come up with completely different solutions to, I think, the ones we would have come up with, 15 years ago. And I think that's really exciting to be involved in and be looking at and be part of the creative thinking on how to kind of navigate that.
Yeah. So if energy wasn't what you wanted to do, what did you want to do when you were at school?
I was really good at maths. It came really easy to me. I did economics and accounting at school, computing, and then I left school and went and got an arts degree. And I don't know why, like when I look back at that and I go, it was almost like it wasn't that there were outside influences telling me that I couldn't do that. It was that I just didn't see myself, I couldn't see the role model. I couldn't see who I could be in taking a different career. So I did go down a creative path. And then I think very naturally ended up in technology, just drawn to it. I think it was always inevitable that I would end up in digital and part of software. And when I came out of uni, it was straight into kind of working with clients on their very first website. And in that day and age, it was, they didn't have a brand. They had letterhead, and they would hand it over and go, make me a website. And you'd be like, where do I even start? And it was a real changing industry, very exciting. And so I don't know that I made a choice to be there. I just kind of got drawn in.
I think that's often the way, isn't it? That things find you rather than finding them. So were you in WA for school and uni?
Yeah, so I've lived in Perth all my life. I like to consider myself from Fremantle, Freo girl. But yeah, went to school here, and as is pretty normal in Australia, stayed here for university. And then about 2 years out of my career, I left and moved to London for 5 years.
And how did you find London compared to being over in Australia?
I mean, Perth to London is quite a big it's quite a big contrast. I loved London. I remember the first job that I had in London. I remember going to the interview and I was so nervous, and I just thought, oh my God, they're going to think, I don't know what I'm doing. My experience isn't going to count for anything. And I remember walking into this first interview in gorgeous old building in London and sitting down and being interviewed by another Australian, having the job before I'd even walked out, which is, is very classic London. But I just loved it. I loved the diversity and the different, opportunities and the nightlife and the travel and everything else that goes with it. Yeah, I loved London.
And how did you find like the cultural differences when you moved over?
I think you assume there are none, and then you get there and it's the subtle things that really make a massive difference. I remember, so I had a long commute and I was in my 20s and I used to buy magazines, and I remember reading a women's magazine. I think the cover was something like How to Please Your Man. And in Australia, it would never say how to please your man. It would always say how to be pleased, or how to, get the best study relationship. And I just remember that subtle difference just taught me a lot about the little things of the culture. I also found I was very blunt. So I had to completely change my communication style, because I would say something and I could feel it land badly. And so I definitely kind of became a bit softer in the way that I communicated.
And did you think you took that softness back with you, or do you think it was actually like it's easier to just communicate in the original way?
I don't think I necessarily brought softness back. I think what I brought back was understanding that you communicate differently in different situations. So you kind of, alter for the crowd that you're with, and, how, watching other people's cues and really seeing what lands and being aware of how your message is landing. I think that was really the key lesson.
Yeah, I definitely noticed, not so much when I went to Australia, but more when I went to the US, working in the US, my sense of humor just not landing. That, yes. I need a card to say that was funny, laugh.
Yes, that was a joke.
Yeah. And did you say you were in the UK for 5 years?
I was. It wasn't quite 5 years, but almost 5 years. I met my now husband and had some really great career experiences and some great travel experiences, and, really kind of changed my perspective on the world.
And what made you go back?
I think I just needed to be home. I think there was lots of things going on. I mean, to be perfectly honest, the July bombings had happened and London had got really hard, and Perth seemed a really easy place to come back to. It was just kind of going home and feeling the need to be safe, and yeah.
And I think then you've got your beautiful beaches and the bright blue sky. Why wouldn't you go back to Perth?
Yeah, I remember my first winter kind of hit maybe end of March, start of April. And I remember walking into work and going, I'm so sad. And people were like, yeah, that's because you haven't had any sun in. And I was like, I'm so sad. And they're like, yeah, this is when you're supposed to plan a holiday somewhere sunny. And I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to do.
Definitely need some sunshine. I'm looking out the window in London today and it's just a bit grey. And although St Paul's is beautiful, I'm like, this weather is not good.
I won't tell you anything about the weather here right now.
I know, I'll be sickened by it. Who has been your biggest cheerleader in your career?
So I have two great parents who have continued to be amazing cheerleaders and support everything I do. They see me through rose-coloured glasses for sure. But in my career, I guess, colleague-wise, I came into Xodus through a little startup called Greenlight, and we were acquired about 3.5 years ago. And the founder of that company was Petrino, and she's really been a massive influence on my career, a big supporter, and definitely a cheerleader for me, and a mentor as well.
Nice. And you definitely need those people in your career as well, don't you?
Yeah, I think the sad thing is that I didn't have someone like that sooner. And I think I was really lucky to find her. And they're definitely obviously very supportive people all the way through my career, but just someone you can really look up to, and also I think emulate a little bit is really important.
And how did you find Petrino?
So I've known Trina since I was about 12 years old. Our dads have played football together, Australian rules football for the Australian rules football. We'd just known each other, very close family friends. And one day she had an idea for a software product that is now a piece of software we use at Xodus called eBase. But at the time it was just a little idea. And she said, I think I need someone like you. And we kind of started collaborating, and I just had my daughter Rosie, so it was about 4 months after I'd had Rosie, and we started working together, and then that just grew and grew and grew until it became kind of a job where not only was I helping her get this software built, but also operations manager of Greenlight Environmental and making everything happen from the IT systems to the brand and to HR and everything. So it was a really enjoyable and rewarding job.
And you must have been just busy at that time. How was it balancing having a child and having this new other baby, which was Greenlight, which was growing and changing?
I think the best thing about it is that when you're coming back into work, you really value those hours you're away from your child, especially in the early days, and you want to be useful. And I think the best thing about coming into a job like that was new and exciting and refreshing, is that I felt like every minute away from my daughter Rosie was a minute that I was actually really adding value, really focused on outcomes. And so it was actually really rewarding. We went straight into the cloud. So the things that we use today, like Teams chat and, working all online, we were doing that through different tools, but the same thing. So we're really outcomes focused. I could work from home. I could work during naps. I could work at the playground. And it was a really rewarding experience, and definitely taught us some awesome lessons that carried us through COVID without really missing a beat.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you think the world has caught up now with how you were kind of working then?
Yeah, it does definitely feel like that. When we went into lockdown at first, there was very little change other than the fact that I had a child full-time at home. There was very little change in terms of how I was working, which was through Teams chats and through, sharing files and collaborating and talking to people online. It really wasn't that big a change. And it definitely is a great way to work. It's productive, for me, it just works. And so, I'm glad the world's changed.
Yeah, and it allows everyone to up their gift game. So
it does. Who doesn't love it? I don't know. I feel like that makes us really old, liking gifts now.
I mean, who knows? But, if I find a good one, it gives me joy. Okay, I think what we'll do is we'll leave why energy there, and we will move on to my next question, which is, what do you think has been your biggest challenge?
So I think taking on the operations manager role at Greenlight was that kind of glorious challenge that you kind of live for in your career, which is to have a completely clear slate of basically creating everything you kind of wanted in a company from scratch. So we had a gorgeous office in North Fremantle, and we really were able to create a culture and a focus, have very easy HR systems, have really straightforward, technology, and build a company based on the innovation that, centered around eBase. And I think even though it was fun and it was exciting, it was also, a huge challenge. You don't have a process for onboarding someone, and you don't have a contract template. You don't have anything. So massive challenge, but such a rewarding thing to be able to do. And especially then to work with Petrino to build it into something that would be acquired by a company like Xodus, which then gives us all these opportunities to work with everyone throughout the world and, really be in a great position to move into projects we wouldn't have ever got to do as a small, consultancy. So a huge challenge, but through the way we were able to do it was really exciting as well.
There's a lot of different skills there. How have you found that going through, kind of being able to do everything? How has that shaped your career?
It felt a bit like that was where everything was heading because I have done a lot of different things. So I moved into from uni straight into kind of software and digital and, managing project teams to deliver those. As I kind of moved into my career, I did a bit of e-learning, I did a bit of training. You tend to sit with HR teams when you do that. Bringing project to life, you kind of have all different things. I naturally get IT, so I had built those skills. So it kind of was this weird situation where, my varied career and job opportunities that I'd had in London and had kind of led me to be this very general all-rounder. And so, it was just it was like spreading my wings and just being able to do, really different things and have a go at things that I really enjoyed.
And do you think the role as a BD manager allows you to flex all of those different skills?
I really do. Sometimes within the same hour. Yeah, it's a really varied role. And you're dealing with, one of the things I love is you're dealing with technical experts, like experts in their field, phenomenal, very clever people. And I love that through coming into it with a different perspective and show them like a different way of thinking about it or a different way of communicating it. And I really love that. I really love working with people who think differently to me and who I can teach some things but also learn a huge amount from. So I think that's the best thing about that role is you get to kind of work with very clever people.
And I think that really makes like a job fulfilling, doesn't it? That if you are both teaching and learning at the same time. So do you think there's any challenges that you faced as a woman working in any part of your career?
I mean, absolutely. One that stands out, I guess a time like a lot of women when I was trying to have a baby, it was a really challenging time, really difficult kind of, you fingers crossed that it'll all happen, really quickly, but it didn't happen like that for me. And I'd just come back to work from my second miscarriage and I walked into a meeting with my boss and he sat me down and he goes, listen, I've been thinking about it. I feel like you're going to get pregnant any day now. And so what we need is to hire someone who can take over when you leave. And I was just like floored. I mean, for the fact that that crosses so many boundaries, just the timing of it, coming back after, a pretty hard time. It was just such a, I guess, like being kicked when you were down. So I think that was probably the very worst moment of, I'm being seen as different or I'm being, kind of categorized as, this person. And yeah, it was really hard. And I probably took another year after that miscarriage to really be even able to, even think about trying to have another baby again. And that was very much like I have to get out of this toxic workplace so that I can actually be mentally in a place where I can try again. And I think that was really hard. And I think you just don't expect that to come out of someone's mouth. You kind of think in this day and age, people don't, go there, but he went there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just must have been mortifying to be faced with that.
Yeah, and there's so much secrecy around that process, which is hard in itself, because again, as a woman, you're taking time off work to physically and mentally kind of get yourself back into the game, and you're trying to hide that it has anything to do with pregnancy for this very reason. And then it just compounds how hard that situation is, really.
And do you think we need to be better at that as, not particularly as an industry, but as a society, I suppose, the secrecy around pregnancy and working? Do you think there needs to be changes, or do you think there's been progress made?
I definitely do think there's been progress made. But I guess for me, and it's probably, I feel very strongly that, men have a role in raising children too. And I think the more emphasis we can put on that shared role, that shared responsibility, the less we're actually looking at women as these people that, are going to be responsible for the care of this child solely and only. And so I do think that, we should be looking at it as a shared responsibility generally. And sure, we have a job of carrying a child, but I love it now that, you'll be on a meeting with someone and a man will say, I've got to go pick up the kids. It is really great to see that it's not just me saying it, or it's not just me doing a Teams call from the car park of school. I've had a call today with someone who was doing exactly that. And it's really good to, I think, just get rid of that. If we're going to be parents, we're all parents.
And I definitely think there's been a big shift from COVID. I think especially in the UK when we were all locked in, seeing into people's homes, like you saw their children, like it wasn't like children are over here and work is over here. It just all became really meshed together. And I think that for me, I've really seen a shift in, like you were saying, just both men and women taking that role.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Yeah. I mean, you would know, you say hi to my child, to Rosie,
exactly.
on a regular basis in a meeting.
Yeah, if she's not too annoyed that we're talking rubbish.
She usually is that, sending me notes saying, when will this be over?
Brilliant. So what do you think your biggest success has been?
I'm just really proud of the work that we did with Greenlight and transitioning, that big team into Xodus. And I look at that team now and must have doubled, the team that came on, and the culture is so great, and the opportunities for everyone that has joined the team, either as Greenlight or after as Exodus, are just huge, like working on amazing projects. I see people working, talking to people in Japan for projects and waking up in the morning to talk to Boston. And it's really just, I'm just really proud that we're able to build a small company, transition into Exodus, and have, this complete success. I think it's really exciting.
Absolutely. Yeah, testament to what you and Trina did, where we are now with that team. And I think it is great that we really are that global organization working across time zones, across projects, giving the people the opportunity to find the right jobs, projects, roles. I think that's a super exciting thing as well.
Yeah, I mean, it is really crazy that a Tuesday night you're talking to Japan, Boston, Aberdeen, London, Perth, Melbourne, and, it's just part of our lives now. And, we do need to stop talking about weather, though. I think that might have to become a rule.
Absolutely not. British people, that's all we talk about. Because it's so changeable. There's always something to say about weather. I'll never let it go. And of course you have Rosie. Like, that must have been an absolute joy.
I should have said she was my greatest success.
Maybe, but we'll go with Greenlight first. How old is Rosie now?
So Rosie's 8, but she will tell you she's about to turn 9.
Okay, and when is she turning 9?
So not till May, but she's
got a while.
She's there.
And is she following in your footsteps with being good at maths?
She is following in my footsteps and being good at maths, and she's very proud of the fact that she's good at maths. Maybe overconfident as well, but I'm allowing that. Yeah, no, she loves it, and she is following in my footsteps, but she's much more confident than I could ever claim to be, and has a fire that I think I only got at 40.
And that's so nice for you to see and nurture.
Nurture, yeah, but also admire. I think you can learn so much from seeing this little person go out to the world with no fear. It's inspirational. It really is.
And I think that is something I've been thinking about is I think back to kind of 22, 23-year-old Sarah, and I just didn't hadn't had as much life, that where things happen. I was just bolder. I just made decisions. I just took those steps. So I think it's really great to have that back in your life to see that actually.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I suffer so much from imposter syndrome. I mean, even today, you asking me questions, I'm like, why me? But I think it's just a reminder that is a waste of time. Questioning why you're in a room, questioning, why you is just a waste of time. You just need to take the opportunities and go for it.
Have you got any tips or tricks around that you've learned to deal with that imposter syndrome?
I think when I was younger, somehow I almost had to present myself by explaining like I'm not technical. I'm in IT, but I'm not technical. Or it's like you're walking into a room and telling people that you're less than them. What a dumb thing to do. So I don't know that it's tips or tricks as much as I'm not going to ever waste my time telling people I shouldn't, haven't earned my place in the room. And I think I only got that, you turn 40 and you just go, okay, I think you've earned it now, surely.
And I think it is sometimes actually having that word with yourself.
I have so many words with myself. Knowing you, I think you do that too.
One of the ones is I've given up, I think it was just in 2020 in the COVID. I'm not saying sorry anymore unless I am genuinely sorry, actually sorry. And I find myself writing and I'll be like, oh, sorry for not getting back to you. And I'm like, no, I'm not sorry. Actually, I was really busy. How can I say this differently?
That's a good one.
Forward.
I'm one of those people that gets banged into and says sorry.
Yeah. And it is just taking that time to be stop. You don't you don't need to do this.
Yeah.
So on to our last and final question, and that is, if you could go back in time, what is the one piece of advice you would give your younger self?
I guess it's just, back on that imposter syndrome, just to believe in yourself and play to your strengths. I think if you can focus on your strengths and what you can bring into a room, what you can bring into a conversation, what you can bring into a collaboration, and just believe that what you're inputting is worthwhile. I think I so often held back or didn't say something or didn't appreciate that my different point of view would add value. And that for me is just get into the conversation, just say it out loud and see what happens.
And is there anything you think that we should be saying out loud more? What do you think the taboo subjects are that we aren't yet saying out loud?
I think we still avoid talking about those early stages of pregnancy and miscarriage. And I think we do need to keep those conversations going. And I do think we need to keep talking about the roles dads have in raising their kids, because it's important. And, just as I shouldn't have to jeopardize my home life for work, either should a father. So I think, in the early stages of being a mum, my husband, Steve, couldn't take a lot of time off. He couldn't. And, now he works from home full time. And, he's here when she gets home from school, and, he can do more pickups and more drop-offs. And it's just we're sharing the load. And I think that's, a really great thing for Rosie to see. And I think it's, a great thing for our family.
Yeah. And hopefully I think going forward, like seeing that as a role model for boys growing up, hopefully that is just where the world ends up.
Yeah, I hope so too. Yeah, I think that would be great. And, more kind of, whether we use the word or not, I don't know how I feel about it, but primary carer dads where, they're taking the lead, I think that can only help kind of get rid of the stigma of, women taking time off for kids and all those kinds of things.
Well, I will leave you to your evening, Stacey. Is there anything on this evening? Are you off to do anything fun, or is it collapsing on the sofa?
I think it's a glass of wine and some Netflix.
Brilliant. Any recommendations at the moment?
Well, I actually think The Mandalorian just came out, so I'll be because you did say I was a nerd, so I've got to live it up.
Absolutely. I appreciate you coming full circle. So I will leave you there. Thank you so much for sharing such personal stories and for being so frank. I definitely think that you are an inspiration and a role model to other women in the energy sector. And I will leave you to have a lovely evening.
Thanks, Sarah.
Well, that's it for the latest Tales of the Extraordinary. Thanks for joining me. All episodes of the podcast can be found on our YouTube channel and our social media, with new episodes dropping on Wednesdays. Until next time, take care.
Tales of the Extraordinary is brought to you by the Xodus Empowering the Energy Industry team and produced by The Big Partnership.